Chapter 48:32. You want me to face at him? I'm not going to cry and beg to get married. But after saying that, she blushed. It was as if she was the one who had brought up this topic, as if she really wanted to get married. She asked herself if she was with Ting because she really liked him, or because she wanted to hold on to this driftwood. Was it because she knew that he was the best man she had ever met? It was unlikely that she would meet such a good man in the future, and one who treated her so well. She was a little confused. She was also a little impulsive. Before she figured out, she wanted to hold on to him and trap herself. But Ting said that they were going to get married soon. Why was she hesitating? How pretentious. Ting smiled and didn't say anything. They were developing very quickly now, and he didn't think it would take 2 years. Perhaps they could have a child while she was studying in Italy. Actually, they could get married at any time, and they could have any kind of wedding they wanted. It wasn't that Ting didn't care about it, but he cared more about living with her. Of course, he couldn't let her know about some of his dark thoughts. He also admitted that he was more despicable than Yi Xiangnan, and he might not be able to tolerate it for long. Ting was quiet and didn't say anything. Yihuan looked at his expression and felt that he was a little strange. She sneaked a peek at his face for a long time. Ting smiled. What's wrong? Yihuan frowned. You look like you're plotting something. Ting, do you know that you have this expression when you're scheming against your opponents in the company? Did I? He put away the thoughts in his mind and smiled. It was that gentle Ting again. But Yihuan had seen his methods over the years, and she didn't dare to trust him easily. She coughed lightly. I'm going to sleep. Ting knew that she was really tired and didn't drag her to talk, even though he wanted to spend time with her. Even though they couldn't do anything, it was still good to talk. He helped her lie down. They had discussed marriage today, so he lowered his head and kissed her. Yihuan was a little surprised, but she didn't reject him. Instead, he stroked his lips and didn't say anything for a long time. Go to sleep. I'll take you back tomorrow morning. With this injury, you should rest at home for a few days. His voice was very gentle, so gentle that Yihuan was intoxicated. She had never heard Ting speak in such a tone. It was as if he was talking to his lover. His heart throbbed a little, but he had to pretend as if nothing had happened. It was a little hard for him. She pursed her lips and made a sound of acknowledgement. However, after a while, she remembered and said, I'm fine. I don't need to rest for a few days. Ting was quite domineering. Listen to me. His hands pressed down on her shoulders, not allowing her to refuse. Yihuan wanted to say that her parents didn't control her like this, but she paused. Suddenly, he realized that everything was different. It was because of the change in their relationship that his attitude towards her was different from before. In the past, he would coax, cheat, and pamper her. But now, he treated her like a woman. His identity had also risen from big brother to the role of a man. Yihuan's face heated up again. Ting placed his palm on her face. Naturally, he could feel that her face was very hot, so he smiled. What's wrong? Nothing, she said awkwardly and turned her head away. Ting leaned over and asked in a low voice, Really nothing, huh? Chapter 48:33. On the other side, Qin Xian was driving with music playing. It was his favorite singer, Qin Xian, who loved endless loops. At that moment, it started raining again. He turned on the windshield wipers. It happened to be a Friday, and it was also the rush hour. The traffic was jammed, and he didn't know how much Ainan had drunk during this time. Seriously, she was an old woman. It was just a breakup. Moreover, he really doubted that she and Ting had ever started. If they hadn't started, what was there to be disappointed about? It wasn't like all the men in the world had died. But with Ainan's personality, it was really troublesome to find a man. Sometimes it wasn't a good thing for a woman to be too rich or too capable. At least, she had fewer choices when it came to finding a man. Qin Xian put his finger in his mouth and bit it as he drove. He waited for the traffic to clear before driving forward. Just like that, he arrived at Ainan's bar at around 9 o'clock. When the bartender showed him the bill, his face was about to turn black. A woman had spent more than 600,000 in a bar, and all the dishes were the most expensive. Qin Xian swiped his card with a dark expression and helped the drunk woman out. Ainan was drunk and very restless. She was still throwing a tantrum on his shoulder. "Who are you? Are you a gigolo who wants me to buy you?" He was a gigolo, and he was very good-looking. Bainan pinched his face gently. Not only was he good-looking, but he was also very comfortable. So tender and good-looking. Bainan's eyes were a little dazed. She stumbled backward and leaned against the table. "I told you I won't pay." "Pay?" Qin Xian laughed angrily. What did she think he was? Was he selling his face? He sneered. "Lawyer Bai, do you really think highly of me? Are you satisfied with my face?" Bainan walked forward again and patted his face. "About 200. Qin Xian's face darkened, and he grabbed her hand. "Don't touch." Bainan's suit jacket was in her hand. Actually, she had a good figure. Of course, she didn't look bad. How could the child of Yim Yulin and Bai Shuili be bad? Bainan tilted her head and stared at Qin Xian. It reminded Qin Xian of two famous sayings: "Women are 30 and 40. At this time, he also noticed that the men around him had begun to stare at Bainan. Her temperament was a little out of place here. It wasn't that she was old-fashioned, but she was born with a noble aura. Noble men were common here, but noble women rarely came to this kind of place. "Let's go," Qin Xian snorted. Bainan immediately grabbed her bag, held his arm, and walked out. When she was about to get into the car, Qin Xian suddenly thought of something and pressed her head against the car. "Do you feel like vomiting?" Bainan was very drunk. She shook her head. "Why do you ask?" She touched the smooth lines of the car with her fingers and looked up. "Is it very profitable in this industry? A sports car worth more than 10 million. Qin Xian was annoyed and amused. She couldn't recognize him, but she did recognize the car. So he sneered. "It's not bad. It adds up. If it's 200, I'll cover you for 5 years. Bainan patted his face again. "It's good to be the receptionist in my law firm." Chapter 48-34. Her eyes were a little blurred. Rich women will definitely come to me for divorce cases in the future. That's the easiest thing to say. She had inadvertently revealed something. Qin Xian sneered in his heart. It turned out that the righteous lawyer Bai liked divorce cases. Qin Xian ignored her. He opened the car door and stuffed her in. He held the door and bent down. "If you dare to vomit on my car, I'll lick it back bit by bit." He said that. Bainan covered her mouth and looked at him in horror. 200. What are you so arrogant about? She fished $200 out of her wallet and flung it in his face rather unceremoniously. Qin Xian gritted his teeth. "I just helped you pay for a few $100,000. Bainan looked straight at him. "As a man, is it expensive to buy me a few glasses of wine?" "Is it expensive? How many glasses of wine?" Qin Xian grabbed her hand. "Now get out of the car." "I don't want it." Bainan hugged her handbag. "I paid for it." Qin Xian gritted his teeth. "Is this 200 yuan? You said it's 200 yuan?" Bainan's face looked a little naive. Qin Xian wanted to strangle this old woman. She pretended to be innocent when she was drunk. Was she really drunk or pretending? He was considering whether to pull her out of the car and throw her on the road. However, he gave up in the end. It was raining now. No matter what, he couldn't leave her behind. He walked around the car and got into the car. He felt like he had seen a ghost. He started the car and turned on the music. "Where do you live?" Bainan leaned against the seat. After a while, she seemed to have fallen asleep. She murmured, "Let's go to your house." Qin Xian's mind was blown. He turned his head. "My house." He reached out and he shook her not too gently. "Bainan, are you deliberately taking advantage of me? If you really want a man, I can help you." She did not wake up. She took a pillow out of nowhere and hugged it in her arms. "I want you. You're pretty good looking. The conscience of the industry." As he said this, he sighed in satisfaction. Qin Xian frowned and glared at her. And that drunk old woman actually fell asleep just like that. Outside the car, it was dark and raining. His car was filled with the aroma of wine, and there was also the faint scent of a woman's perfume. Qin Xian thought with some disgust. She even knew how to use perfume. He started the car and drove towards the villa where he lived. Qin Xian lived quite far away. It was a full 40-minute drive. As he drove, he would occasionally look at Bainan. She was drunk. She had been making a lot of noise just now, but now she was strangely quiet. At a red light, there was a minute. Qin Xian could not help but look at her sideways. Bai Anan had fallen asleep with her face tilted to one side. Her fair cheeks were a little flushed, and her hair, which was usually tied up, was now undone. Her silky black hair brushed against her face, and she looked indescribably beautiful. Her side profile was especially well-defined, and her nose was elegant. Her lips were the perfect color, even without lipstick. Fragrant and soft. Qin Xian suddenly thought of these words to describe Bai Anan's appearance. She was beautiful, but not seductive. Usually, she would consciously hide it. Now that she was drunk, she had a charm that was not usually seen. However, no matter how charming she was still a 30-year-old woman to Qin Xian. He would not be interested. He turned his gaze away and stepped on the accelerator. About half an hour later, the car arrived at the villa where he lived. Chapter 48-35. The villa was a standalone building, with a total area of more than 600 square meters. Usually, only part-time workers came here because Qin Xian didn't like to be disturbed. The car stopped in the underground garage and turned off the engine. He turned his head to look at Bai Anan. "We're here." Bai Anan changed her position and continued to sleep. Qin Xian shook her a little rudely. "We're here. Do you want to make a call?" "How old am I?" Bai Anan mumbled and yawned again. "We're here. I'm going to sleep." As she said that, she opened the car door shakily and got out of the car shakily. She walked towards the elevator. Qin Xian immediately got out of the car and chased after her. Bai Anan had already walked to the elevator door. She leaned against the wall and looked at him. Being a gigolo is really rich. This villa looked ordinary, but the interior was different. Just the security system alone cost a few million, and the basement was so exquisite. Bai Anan felt that she had lived in vain. His style reminded her of a person, Qin Xian. Only a legendary person would be able to spend money like that. Rich families weren't actually that extravagant. They weren't as exaggerated as described in the books, but Qin Xian did. Now, she had met another one, and he was raised by the Qin family, Qin Xian. Bai Anan suddenly woke up a little. The gigolo was Qin Xian. She couldn't take the 200 yuan, she thought with some pity. Qin Xian also realized that she seemed to be a little more awake. He put his palm over her and brought her into the elevator. Bai Anan stood in the elevator and wanted to sleep. She rarely drank, but when she drank too much, she wanted to sleep. When she reached the first floor, she kicked off her high heels and threw her handbag on the sofa and jacket as soon as she stepped on the white carpet. She slowly walked up the stairs in her stockings. Her posture was beautiful, her figure was great, and she had to admit that her face was also very beautiful. Qin Xian said hello, but she continued to walk upstairs as if she didn't hear him. "Bai Anan, this is my house." Qin Xian called out again. "A strange man's house." Bai Anan's voice came from upstairs. "Qin Xian, you're 2 years younger than me, right?" In other words, if there really was something, she wouldn't lose out. This woman. Qin Xian stared upstairs and pulled his tie. "She's really thick-skinned. Is she so casual? Doesn't she care at all?" He rolled up his tie and tossed it aside. He went to the kitchen and poured himself a glass of ice water. He raised his head and gulped it down. He was so excited that the ice cube almost slipped down his throat. Qin Xian cursed again. He secretly thought that he should throw Bai Anan into the hospital where Shun Ting and Yi Huan were staying. There was always a price to pay if one wanted to be sweet, right? Qin Xian put down the cup and decided to check on the drunk, old woman upstairs. As he went upstairs, he rolled up the sleeves of his shirt and paused at the door of the guest room. The door was open, but there was no one inside. His heart skipped a beat, and his fingers clenched into fists. "It can't be what I think it is." He took a few quick steps and opened the door of the master bedroom. Then he was stunned. In the master bedroom, under the dim yellow light, a woman was lying on the black silk sheets. The scene was very shocking. Qin Xian's Adam's apple bobbed a few times. He walked over slowly and sat by the bed. His fingers were trembling as he placed them on her shoulder. "Bai Anan, this is my bedroom." She buried her face in the pillow of the same color and said weakly, "Just one night. Don't be too stingy." Chapter 36. Qin Xian raised his voice. If I don't sleep here, I won't be able to sleep. Ah. Bai Anan looked up and stared at him. Then, she gulped and patted the spot beside her. I'll give you half. Qin Xian gritted his teeth. Woman, why are you so thick-skinned? Both parties are consenting and nothing happened, so there won't be any civil disputes. Bai Anan shouted. Young Master Qin, what are you afraid of? Qin Xian raised his voice. Hey, are you kidding me? I'm not taking you in to sleep on my bed. Guest room, this is the last time. Bai Anan occupied the bed. This is also the last time. I'll sleep here. Qin Xian bounced up as if he was scalded. He glared at her and gritted his teeth. Bai Anan, I'll give you one last chance. Are you sure you want to sleep here? Bai Anan scoffed. Please close the door for me when you go out. Thank you. Qin Xian walked over and closed the door, but he locked himself in as well. After a while, he took some clothes from the bedroom and opened the bathroom door. Bai Anan, don't regret it. Don't cry and ask me to take responsibility. Qin Xian took a cold shower. He must have been too angry to take a cold shower. He had never seen such a thick-skinned woman who had to lie in a strange man's bed. Although he knew that she was drunk, if she wasn't evil, why would she have such thoughts? After taking a shower, Qin Xian changed into a black bathrobe. It was also silk. Yes, the only person in the Qin family who had inherited Qin Chen's extravagance was Qin Xian. The place he lived in was filled with luxury goods, and each of them was priceless. He didn't think that it was bad. He liked this kind of life, and it was more inclined towards the dark side. As for Bai Anan, she wasn't the dark side at all. She was evil, and she was obviously evil, and her surname was Bai. Qin Xian wiped his hair and glared at Bai Anan. In the end, he went to sleep on the sofa. Of course, he couldn't sleep. He only cared about his bed. Every sheet on his bed was made of silk, and so were his pajamas. He would not have been able to sleep otherwise. Of course, Bai Anan did not know that he was doing this. She slept comfortably on his 2-meter bed. Bai Anan was very obedient after she was drunk. This was what Qin Xian suddenly thought of at 3 o'clock at night. Although he couldn't sleep, it was much better than taking care of a drunkard. With that thought in mind, he felt much better. He lay down and took out his phone to play the company's new game. Yes, in addition to new energy sources, he could also develop some games, airlines, and high-speed rail. Qin Xian was almost omnipotent and a genius. Of course, geniuses would also be lonely. They had no one they loved. Other than their family, there was no one else. Qin Xian slowly sat up at night. He often woke up at night and couldn't sleep after waking up. He sat until daybreak. Therefore, he liked to sleep with the lights on. He didn't like to wake up at night. That feeling was terrible. Just as he gave up and sat up, a voice came from the other side. Qin Xian, I'm hungry. I want to eat hot pot. Qin Xian frowned and slowly turned his head to look at the old woman on the bed. He gritted his teeth. Bai Anan, don't you think you're asking for too much? Too much. Bai Anan grabbed her hair. I don't think so. Aren't you taking care of me? Eating hot pot in the middle of the night. Bai Anan, you're not pregnant. Qin Xian let out a long sigh. Only pregnant women would be so unreasonable. Really? Bai Anan opened her eyes. Pregnant women can be like this? He didn't say anything. Was that the point? Bai Anan thought that he had tacitly agreed and nodded. Then I'll be pregnant. Ah. Qin Xian was shocked. Bai Anan smiled. Artificial insemination. Had you donated before? Qin Xian was speechless. She really thought that he would serve her, and in such a way. He gritted his teeth. If I want a child, there's only one way. Chapter 48:37. Qin Xian narrowed his eyes. Where my bathrobe? Qin Xian narrowed his eyes. Where my bathrobe? He had to wash his bathrobe twice tomorrow, but he did not expect Bai Anan to wear the one he wore tonight. Since he was downstairs, Bai Anan would definitely not go through his wardrobe, so she wore his. The temperature of the villa was constant, so she was barefooted when she came down. She found a pair of slippers downstairs and put them on before heading to the kitchen. Qin Xian was really making hot pot. He took out the ingredients from the fridge and prepared them skillfully. When he heard the footsteps behind him, he asked calmly, "What kind of hot pot base do you want to eat? I don't eat spicy food. Anything else is fine." Bai Anan poked her head over. "You really know how to cook?" I thought you didn't know how to cook. After all, for a pampered young master like him, who was already a tech nouveau riche in his teens, it was normal that he did not know how to cook. She did not expect him to know how to cook. After all, for a pampered young master like him, who was already a tech nouveau riche in his teens, it was normal that he did not know how to cook. She did not expect him to know how to cook. Qin Xian said calmly, "Isn't it normal that I know how to cook? Shenting knows how to cook too, and he cooks very well." Qin Xian, that's enough. Do you have to mention Shenting again and again? Bai Anan snorted coldly. You were so happy that I broke up with my love. Qin Xian snorted coldly as well. What did you ever fall in love? It's just unrequited love. As he said that, he glanced at her. Then, he looked away, his Adam's apple moving uncontrollably. How should he put it? Bai Anan was wearing his black bathrobe. Her long hair was let down because she had washed it, but it was still wet and had not been wiped clean. Her collar was tightly wrapped, so there was absolutely nothing that should not be revealed. But really, she was beautiful without even knowing it. Bai Anan did not seem to know that she was beautiful and always acted like she was used to it. She seduced others without even knowing it. Qin Xian frowned. Go and dry your hair. I don't want to. It will dry in a while. She said nonchalantly. Do you have fruit? I want to eat salad. Take an apple for yourself. Qin Xian would not spoil her. She really treated him like a manservant. Bai Anan nodded. Okay, then I'll starve. I'll wait for you in the living room. As he walked, he rubbed his belly. I'm so hungry. Qin Xian looked at her back and snorted. I really don't know where she gets her confidence from. Humming, he cut a few fruits and made a fruit salad for her. He walked to the living room and put on the coffee table. Bai Anan was lying on the sofa watching TV. This was exactly what her home looked like, and Qin Xian was her manservant. When he brought it over, she merely lifted her eyelids. Thank you. As he ate with his fork, he continued to stare at the TV, completely ignoring his pretty face. Qin Xian gnashed his teeth. Are you also so casual in other men's homes? Oh, I'll do as the host pleases. Bai Anan stretched and looked at him strangely. You're not happy? If you're not happy, I'll go to someone else's house next time and improve it. After all, it's most important that everyone is happy. You still want to go to another man's house? Qin Xian sneered. Aren't you afraid that someone will eat you up? Bai Anan was not too bothered. I happen to have a child. Didn't you say that there's something wrong with me? Qin Xian was exasperated. What kind of woman are you? You're so thick-skinned. Bai Anan smiled. I adapt to the situation, just like Shinting. She clapped her hands. Actually, I'm not that sad. But isn't the normal procedure of a breakup supposed to be drinking? It's a ritual. Chapter 48:38. Qin Xian's face darkened. Are you going to drown your sorrows or celebrate? Both. Bai Anan didn't avoid it. Qin Xian sneered. But you can't let others pay for your sense of ceremony. Bai Anan looked surprised. I don't think I called you President Qin. You were the one who forced me out of the bar. You're lucky that I didn't sue you for attempted rape. Qin Xian really wanted to put the hot pot on her head and see if she could still say something like that. He was really pissed off. How could there be such a thick-skinned woman in this world? She looked so not bad. She was so thick-skinned and had a venomous tongue. She was really the type that he disliked and admired the most. Qin Xian didn't say a word. He walked straight back to the kitchen and continued to prepare the hot pot. Anyway, this was the last time. He would send her off tomorrow morning and never see her again. He wouldn't have to put up with strange old women anymore. He didn't say a word. He kept a straight face until it was time to eat. Bai Anan was in a good mood and had a good appetite. Qin Xian really wondered why she was so thin when she could eat so much. Actually, it wasn't that she was thin. It was just that he felt that she was fat, but he didn't feel that it was enough. Her figure. Qin Xian's Adam's apple moved quietly again. The reason why Bai Anan ate so happily was because Qin Xian's cooking was very good, the kind that could make the tip of the tongue pregnant. She had always liked to eat hot pot, and his cooking was not bad. It was only more hygienic. After eating for half an hour, she was finally full. She finally leaned against the back of the chair and looked at Qin Xian. You eat so little. Qin Xian quietly packed up the things. I don't have the habit of eating supper. That's good. You keep your figure. Ainan grinned. After all, you have such a weird temper. If you don't have a good-looking face and a barely presentable body, you'll probably be a bachelor in the future. Qin Xian looked up at her. Unfortunately, I also think the same way. So, you should quit eating supper in the future. Otherwise, you probably won't be able to get married. It doesn't matter. Ainan wasn't angry. She smiled. It's good that you have a job. Who said that you have to get married? Qin Xian was surprised. He then added, You're looking for excuses. Why are you looking for excuses? Ainan snorted. I never settle for second best. That's not my style. Qin Xian stared at her for a moment before packing up his things. I'm going to the study. Ainan, you can stay here and watch TV or go to bed. It's up to you. Ainan stretched herself and said, All right, I'm going to bed. Thank you, President Qin. She had said something sensible. Qin Xian watched her go upstairs as if she was at her own home. He couldn't help but say, Lawyer Bai, your alcohol tolerance is actually quite good. Ainan paused for a moment. She held the stairs and smiled. It's from practice. You know the alcohol is needed everywhere. I won't throw up after drinking too much. Qin Xian was surprised and didn't say anything for a moment. To be honest, neither he nor Yi Huan had the experience of drinking with others. He was in the field of technology. There were many people who begged him. Moreover, he had the Qin family behind him and Shunting behind him. Needless to say, there was no need to mention Yi Huan. In this generation of the Qin family, the one who needed to drink was Shunting. Shunting was a huge drinker. Perhaps this drinking capacity was also obtained from drinking. Ainan was the chosen one. Did she need to drink with others until she vomited? Chapter 48-39. Looking at his gaze, Ainan smiled and shook her hand gently. Isn't that normal? With that said, she walked back to the master bedroom. Qin Xian felt that she was so sure that he wouldn't do anything. This woman really knew how to judge people. She was really too hateful. Qin Xian went to the study and worked for the whole night. He stayed up until 8 in the morning. He felt that as a strong woman, even if she had a hangover, she would still get up early in the morning. But when he pushed open the door to the master bedroom, Ainan was sleeping soundly, hugging his pillow in her hands. Those who didn't know better would think that this was her home and that this was her bed. Besides, she didn't even close the door. Did she really think that he was safe? Qin Xian went over and reached out to push her. Ainan, you should get up. Don't stay in my bed anymore. He didn't hide his disdain at all. Ainan slapped his hand away. It's the weekend. So, he gritted his teeth. Ainan turned around and looked at him. We only ate half of the hot pot last night. We can make do for lunch. She meant that she wanted to stay here for half a day. Qin Xian sneered. Why don't you say that I'll cook for dinner? Ainan actually said shamelessly. That's fine too. I'll get my secretary to send my laptop over in the afternoon. I can work here too. Ainan. Qin Xian finally couldn't take it anymore. Didn't you say that it's the weekend? Yes, so I'm not going to the office. Is there a problem? She pretended to be innocent and pure, but the word shameless was written all over her. Qin Xian felt that the argument he had with a lawyer, the most famous lawyer in the industry, was like a scholar meeting a soldier. How did she become a lawyer? She might be more professional if she was a gangster. He gritted his teeth. You're relying on me now, aren't you? I'll leave tomorrow. I have a 2 o'clock flight to Switzerland tomorrow afternoon, she said indifferently. It seemed very light, but for Qin Xian, it was a very tempting condition. Bear with it a little longer, and she would be gone. Moreover, when she went abroad, he wouldn't contact her anymore and wouldn't take the initiative to provoke her. She wouldn't have to bear with it anymore. Qin Xian endured it. Ask your secretary to bring your clothes over. Don't wear men's clothes all the time in my house. It's very ugly. You can't hold back anymore. Ainan smiled. Do you want me to make a call for you and book a hotel room? I can afford 10 or 20,000 yuan, but you have to come back before dinner. 8 o'clock at the latest. Otherwise, I will starve to death. Ainan. He clenched his fists. What kind of woman are you? A lawyer. She did not get angry and smiled. Now be a good boy and go make breakfast. I will sleep for a while after eating. After saying that, She buried herself in the quilt again, treating it as her own bed. Qin Xian walked out and called Shun Ting at the door. Now, he wanted Shun Ting to get rid of this woman. He couldn't hold it in any longer. But no one picked up Shun Ting's call. Qin Xian froze for a moment before understanding. Fuck, it's so early in the morning. And so fast. Shun Ting was really fast. He let out a long breath. Thinking of Bai Anan, he was actually a little surprised. With Bai Anan's wealth, if she dressed like this in front of Shun Ting and deliberately went to his apartment, Shun Ting wouldn't be able to resist. Men would feel lonely too. After all, he wanted been with Yi Xiangnan all those years. But he didn't understand. How could a woman like Bai Anan be so proud? Kong Kong. She was so bold in front of him. Happy mid-autumn. Chapter 4840. Qin Xian hung up the phone and went downstairs angrily. He sat on the sofa downstairs and couldn't understand why Bai Anan would stick to him. He rubbed his chin gently with his thumb and finally fell asleep on the sofa. He woke up because Bai Anan's secretary had come over. This woman was really planning to work at his house. Bai Anan's secretary looked sweet and actually resembled Yi Hui. Qin Xian took a few more glances at her and then asked her to wait downstairs while he went upstairs to call Bai Anan. Bai Anan could sleep in his bedroom and climb into his bed, but that didn't mean that Qin Xian liked others to watch in his bedroom. He walked slowly up the stairs. When he reached the corner of the staircase, he paused, but he still knocked on the master bedroom door. The door opened, and Bai Anan was still wearing his bathrobe. She went back to the sofa and played with her phone. She lowered her head, and her black hair covered her eyes. What's the matter? Lawyer Bai, I'm not your subordinate. Qin Xian crossed his arms in front of him. Bai Anan nodded. I know. What's wrong? Your secretary is downstairs. Qin Xian's voice was cold. Go downstairs immediately. I don't like strangers at home. Bai Anan finally put down the phone in her hand. Yaren? I thought you'd be happy. She's the prettiest girl in my law firm. Really? Qin Xian didn't seem moved. Bai Anan curled her lips. I thought you would like girls like Yi Hui, so I specially asked Yaren to come over to deliver something. After she said that, Qin Xian's expression didn't look too good because she had hit the nail on the head. Although he wasn't particularly moved, he still had some feelings for her. He didn't expect Bai Anan to be able to see through it. After all, they had only been together once or twice, and she even said it out loud. I don't think so. Qin Xian's voice was cold. Go downstairs. Bai Anan glanced at him and felt that he was being a little strange. She walked out slowly, and as she fastened her belt, she said with some uneasiness, By the way, President Qin, you should find a girlfriend now that you're getting older. Otherwise, you'll seem a little weird when you're so hot-tempered. Qin Xian's face darkened again. Bai Anan smiled and finally went downstairs. She acted as though this was her home. As she walked down the stairs, her secretary, Yaren, stared at her superior and boss, stuttering. Lawyer Bai, is this your boyfriend? Without waiting for her to speak, Secretary Yu whispered again, very handsome. Moreover, it looked like he was really rich. The decoration here was very tasteful, and the smell of money was everywhere. A pretty boy. Bai Anan didn't think much of it and said, What a bad temper. She sat on the sofa and took stock of her belongings. Secretary, you looked at the men's bathrobe she was wearing. God, Lawyer Bai looked really good in it, and it looked like a wife wearing her husband's pajamas. How should she put it? It felt like it was a good match. Lawyer Bai had always been very good-looking. She was also an elite in the industry and had high standards. Now that she finally had a man she liked, Secretary, you felt that this pretty boy was more suitable for Lawyer Bai than President Shun. President Shun looked like an elite like Lawyer Bai. Wouldn't it be especially boring for two people of the same type to live together? Chapter 48-41. This pretty boy was different. He had a pretty face, and he seemed to be more exquisite and good-looking than a woman. His figure was also very good, and his black trousers made his legs look very, very long. Secretary sighed in her heart. What a masterpiece. That Lawyer Bai must have been very happy these 2 days. Bai Anan flipped through a file and read it carefully. How could she know that her secretary had already thought so much in the blink of an eye? She only read for a minute before letting Yurin go back. After Yurin left, Ainan didn't go upstairs immediately. She sat on the sofa and read the file. Qin Xian came down from upstairs and saw her fascinated look. He walked behind her and flicked her hair with his finger. Change your clothes. Didn't you bring clothes over? What if someone comes over dressed like this in my house? Who would come over if you lived alone? At most, Auntie Zhongdian would come over, and it wouldn't be strange unless you brought someone of a different gender back before. That would be strange. Ainan's gaze fell on the file as she spoke. Her fingers curled as if she was going to grab a mug, but her hand was empty, so she said naturally, "Go pour me a cup of coffee." She had just finished speaking when she remembered that this wasn't her office, so she looked up and smiled at Qin Xian. "Young Master Qin, can you help me pour a cup of coffee?" Qin Xian rolled his eyes. "Ainan, can you be any more thick-skinned?" Ainan was still all smiles. Qin Xian glared at her again, but still went to the kitchen. Ainan immediately looked at the file in her hand again. This case was quite tricky, so she was a little engrossed in it. At that moment, a soft voice came from beside her. She thought that Qin Xian had returned. "Coffee." But the voice was very soft and gentle. "Ainan?" Hearing this voice, Ainan was scared out of her wits. She slowly looked up. As expected, it was Yi Huan. She was Qin Mo's wife, Qin Xian's aunt, and Qin Xian's mother. The two families had dealings, especially with Xiangnan, so it was absolutely impossible for Ainan to pretend that she didn't know him. She squeezed out a smile and immediately jumped up. She reached out to pull her pajamas and explained helplessly, "Aunt He, this is definitely a misunderstanding." Yi Huan was in a very good mood. Shen Ting and Yi Huan were together. She had thought that Qin Xian was a big problem, but Qin Xian was really unexpected. He brought the girl back, and she was wearing his pajamas. What else was there to say? He moved swiftly. Yi Huan was very satisfied. Ainan's appearance was flawless, and her family background was clean. Yes, she was very good. In fact, she was a social climber. There were signs of Shun Ting and Ainan in the past, but as an aunt, she could tell that Shun Ting's heart had always been with Yi Huan. So, the two of them wouldn't do anything out of line. Shun Ting also stayed at home every day. But now that he was with Yi Huan, he was living outside. Yi Huan was an experienced person, so it was easy for her to understand. But she really didn't expect that Qin Xian would act so quickly and get together with Ainan. Her face was full of interest. Ainan hated herself to death. Wasn't she just greedy for 2 meals from a pretty boy? Did she have to get herself involved like this? Now, she couldn't clear her name even if she jumped into the Yellow River. She scratched her head and tried her best to convince Yi Huan. "Aunt Qin Xian and I was drunk. Qin Xian brought me back." Chapter 48-42. I know, it's not safe for girls to stay outside, and the hotel is not hygienic. It's good for Qin Xian to live alone. Yi Huan didn't answer her question. Ainan's heart sank. "It's over." At this moment, Qin Xian walked over with a tray in his hand. Apart from coffee, there was also a sandwich he made for breakfast. This was undoubtedly the truth. Pajamas, breakfast in the morning. What else was there to say? Ainan felt a headache coming on. She looked at Qin Xian speechlessly. In fact, Qin Xian had heard the sound just now and knew it was Yi Huan. He wasn't surprised. He put the tray on the table and looked at Ainan. "Sit down and have breakfast." Ainan was too embarrassed to read documents and eat breakfast at the same time. She could have used his house as her office, but she didn't have the face to do so in front of the elders. She coughed lightly. "I'll go upstairs to change." It's not too late to change after breakfast. Yi Huan held her hand and said intimately, "Let's go to the dining table. Sitting here all the time will affect your fertility." Fertility? Ainan was speechless. With whom? Yi Huan smiled. "Other than Qin Xian, there was only one male here, and the pajamas you were wearing belonged to Qin Xian. Who else could you have a baby with?" Ainan felt that she had to make things clear, so she coughed lightly. "Auntie, it's really a misunderstanding. There's nothing going on between me and Qin Xian. It's just a coincidence." After saying that, she carefully looked at Yi Huan's expression. Iwan seemed to be very interested in it. By Ainin cursed Shin in her heart. What's the point of explaining? She squeezed out a smile. Auntie, you won't tell my parents, will you? Iwan looked embarrassed. Anin, I think Qin Xian still has to give an explanation for this matter. After all, it's already happened. Bai Ainin almost spat out the coffee in her mouth. She hurriedly swallowed it. Wait, nothing happened between us. Huan stared at her clothes. Bai Ainin glanced at Qin Xian. Huan patted Qin Xian's shoulder. What do you say? Don't tell me you don't want to take responsibility. Bai Ainin was relieved. Qin Xian would definitely deny it. But she didn't expect Qin Xian to nod. Of course I will. After saying that, he smiled at her. That smile made Bai Ainin's hair stand on end. If it weren't for the fact that her elders were here, she would have jumped up and started fighting with Qin Xian. He was really bad. Huan said cheerfully, That's settled then. I'll discuss it with your Uncle Qin. After all, this is a matter between two families. We can't be careless. You're not young anymore. Don't learn from young people and fall in love for several years. It's the same after marriage. Qin Xian nodded in agreement. Auntie is right. Bai Ainin stopped talking. She bent over and ate her breakfast obediently. Huan didn't stay long and left quickly. Before leaving, she even gave Bai Ainin a gift. Bai Ainin's face was sore from smiling before she saw her off. When only the two of them were left, Bai Ainin glared at Qin Xian. You did it on purpose. Yes, it was on purpose. Qin Xian leaned next to her and actually picked up the coffee cup she had drunk from and took a sip. It tasted good. Bai Ainin glared at him. You did it on purpose. Do you think I can't do anything about it? Chapter 48-43. Qin Xian sighed. My auntie isn't stupid. She's just joking and won't take it seriously. Joking? Won't take it seriously? Bai Ainin raised an imperial green pendant in her hand. Young Master Qin, is this what you mean by not taking it seriously and joking? Qin Xian merely smiled and did not say anything else. Not taking it seriously and joking was what he thought his heart. Indeed, he did not take it seriously. He was not that averse to marriage, but he had never thought of marrying a girl like Bai Ainin. How should he put it? She was too domineering, just like Shun Ting, and he was more casual. He was surprised that he was really considering whether they should be together and whether their personalities were compatible. After a moment of shock, he smiled faintly. Bai Ainin glared at him. When she saw him smile, her heart skipped a beat. Even though this gigolo was annoying, he was quite good-looking. He did not usually smile, but he looked good when he did. Perhaps, sensing her gaze, Qin Xian looked up with a faint smile. Bai Ainin, don't worry. I don't have any improper thoughts about you. Thank you. She harumphed and took a cup of coffee to hide it. She did not notice that it was a cup of coffee that Qin Xian had drunk from. She lowered her head quietly. On the other hand, Qin Xian's gaze landed on her. After staring for a while, he said softly, I'll send you back later. Jokes aside, he did not want to get involved with her. Bai Ainin did not reject him, but she felt a little upset when she left. She seemed to have been despised by someone. Ever since she was young, she had always been outstanding and had never been despised by anyone. Shun Ting did not have feelings for her, and they still respected each other. However, Qin Xian's attitude was clearly that he did not like her and despised her. Bai Ainin sat in the car and waited for the car to arrive at her apartment. When she got out of the car, she turned her head. Qin Xian, am I particularly annoying? Am I still a workaholic at such an old age? Qin Xian said nothing. Bai Ainin knew. She gently bit her lower lip and didn't ask anymore. She reached out to open the car door and got out. When she got out, she paused for a moment and bent down. Thank you. I don't feel that bad anymore. Qin Xian's fingers twitched. As long as you don't feel uncomfortable. After she closed the door, his car drove away. Bai Ainin stood there and watched his car drive away. She suddenly felt that Qin Xian was an animal that was isolated from his emotions. She had discovered that he had feelings for Yi Hui in the past, and she had thought that he would pursue her. However, he did not even after 2 or 3 years. The night fennel was very beautiful. If Qin Xian didn't fall for such a woman, Bai Ainin would think that Qin Xian probably didn't like women anymore. Was that why Yuan was so anxious? She smiled again. Her intuition told her that wasn't the case. Qin Xian just didn't like to share his inner world with someone else. At this thought, Bai Anan shook her head. It's an occupational hazard. She quickly stepped into the elevator. Of course, she left the meeting gift with Qin Xian. Qin Xian would explain it to He Huan. Bai Anan had thought that after this, she wouldn't be able to see Qin Xian easily. After all, she was no longer working at King Corporation, so it was unlikely that she would see him. However, she had just returned from London when she unexpectedly bumped into Qin Xian. It was Qin Xian's matchmaking banquet. Bai Anan was wearing a full set of clothes. Just as she was about to enter her private room, she saw Qin Xian walking over from the other side. There were a few elders beside him. This lineup couldn't be any more obvious. There was nothing else other than a matchmaking banquet. Chapter 48-44. Bai Anan was talking about business. Other than her suit, she was carrying a briefcase in her hand. Secretary Ya was beside her. As he walked, his footsteps came to a halt. She met Qin Xian face to face. She knew Qin Mo and He Huan, but she didn't know the other two elders. They might be the girl's parents. No matter what kind of misunderstanding there was before, Bai Anan still politely greeted them and made way for them. Secretary saw this and also turned to the side, but she was a little hesitant. Wasn't this the pretty boy that lawyer stayed at last night? He looked like he was going on a blind date. He looked especially energetic and neat today. He looked a little different. Secretary whispered, "This is a blind date. Lawyer Bai, are you going to let him go just like that?" Bai Anan also lowered her voice. Nothing happened. However, Secretary didn't believe such an explanation. She only looked at her boss suspiciously. Bai Anan couldn't care less about her and smiled politely at He Huan. He Huan felt that it was a pity. She quite liked Bai Anan. Although she was 2 years older than Qin Xian, she had a calm personality. Bai Anan was the child of Yi Mulin and Bai Xueli. She was very good-looking, but her personality was like Yi Mulin. She didn't have a trace of Bai Xueli's naivety. It was a good match for Qin Xian. She also made the best of a mistake that day. She didn't expect both children to have no intention. One denied it directly, and the other hid abroad for a few days before returning. He Huan sighed in her heart, but she couldn't show it in front of the girl's parents. She just smiled like an elder. "Anan, come visit us when you're free. He Huan likes to be with you." "Qin He Huan?" Mrs. Qin must be joking. Bai Anan didn't expose her. She smiled. "Okay, Annie, I'll definitely go when I'm free. By the way, when are they getting married?" He Huan sighed. He Huan is going abroad for 2 years. She said she's going to learn photography. She's going to Milan. Shinting also let her go. Bai Anan smiled and did not say anything else. She knew very well that in the next 2 years, King Group's business focus would be overseas. That was why Shun Ting was willing to let it go. But for what she could see, they would be killing people soon. It was the same no matter where it was. Bai Anan was a little absent-minded. When she returned to her senses, her gaze inadvertently landed on Qin Xian's eyes. His gaze was a little judgmental. Bai Anan didn't really like this kind of gaze. It was as if all her thoughts were exposed to his gaze. Hence, the corners of her lips curled up. "Uncle, Auntie, I'll go over then. The client is still waiting for me." Just as she was about to leave, He Huan suddenly stopped her. "Girls shouldn't drink too much." Bai Anan stopped in her tracks, as if she was a little surprised. She forgot to control her expression. A few seconds later, she found her voice again. "Secretary, you can drive. Don't worry, Annie." The subtext of her words was that she had to drink. Because today's client was a drinker. He was also a little rough, but because of Bai Anan's family background, he didn't dare to do anything. But Bai Anan still had to drink a few glasses of wine. If she had to lie beside her father, she wouldn't have gotten to where she was today. Of course, the other clients didn't have this kind of face. This was the biggest client in the firm apart from King Group. And now it was the biggest. Accompanying him for a drink or two was nothing. Even if she had to send Secretary Yu out, she would have to consider it. Chapter 48-45. Bai Anan left. They were about to leave too, but He Huan turned around after a few steps. "Qin Xian, why aren't you leaving?" Qin Xian quickened his steps and smiled. It's fine. Yihuan looked at Qin Xian thoughtfully. He felt that Qin Xian's attitude was a little off. A few days ago, Qin Xian came to return the things and firmly said that he and Bai Anan had only met a few times. But now, it seemed that this silly boy obviously couldn't let it go. At the very least, he had a good impression of him. Thinking of this, she sighed. Tonight's blind date was wasted again. She looked at Qin Mo listlessly. They went to the private room. The girl was pretty, but not as pretty as Bai Anan. She had a good temperament, but not as good as Bai Anan. She had a good career, but not as good as Bai Anan. She had a good temper, but not as good as Bai Anan. The other party's conversation style was not bad, but Qin Xian clearly looked distracted. Yihuan sighed again. This kid was just fooling them. He had no intention of getting married. In the past, she wouldn't have left him alone. She would have forced him to go on blind dates like Qin Mo did. Maybe one of them would have liked him. But today, after Qin Xian gave the girl the cold shoulder again, Yihuan didn't blame him. She sent the girl away with Qin Xian and Qin Mo. The girl was quite disappointed. After all, she was really good. But Qin Xian didn't even smile at her for the whole night. He didn't have any intention of interacting with her. But there was nothing she could do about it. After sending her away, Qin Xian heaved a sigh of relief. Uncle, Andy, I'll send you back. Qin Mo glanced at him. I have a car. Qin Xian nodded. Then I'll send you to the parking lot. Qin Mo wanted to say something, but hesitated. Yihuan tugged at him, and he finally gave up. In the parking lot, when Qin Mo closed the door, he rolled down the window. Qin Xian stood outside, smiling. Qin Mo's brows furrowed. Do you have a girl you like? No. Qin Xian said straightforwardly. Qin Mo placed his fingers on the steering wheel and tilted his head. Yihuan interrupted him, obviously trying to protect him. Look at you. Qin Xian doesn't like it when you force him to get along with you and force him to marry you in the future. Qin Mo looked at his wife disapprovingly. She spoiled Qin Xian too much. There were 3 children in the family. Qin Xian was probably the last one to come to the family, and he was also Aijia's child. Therefore, Yihuan was probably a little sensitive to Qin Xian and was very obedient to him. This was something that Qin Mo didn't approve of. It would spoil the child. Fortunately, Qin Xian didn't go astray. Yihuan began to act like this again when it came to marriage. Qin Mo whispered, Don't interrupt. Why should I interrupt? Yihuan suddenly frowned. My stomach hurts. Qin Mo, hurry up and drive. I want to go home. Qin Mo looked worried. What's wrong? I'm not feeling well. My stomach hurts. I need to lie down for a while. She covered her stomach with her hand, but she quickly gave Qin Xian a look. Qin Xian understood tacitly, but he also looked worried. Then hurry up and send Annie back. Qin Mo looked at him and then at Yihuan, but he still started the car. When the car drove out of the hotel, Qin Mo saw that his wife was still pretending. He couldn't help but roll his eyes. Stop pretending. You always help that guy. Do you think I don't know what kind of person you are? Chapter 48-46. Yihuan put down her hands and snorted. All right, I'll stop pretending. I'll tell you everything. Qin Mo sneered as he drove. You always play this trick. Aren't you tired of it, Mrs. Qin? Yihuan picked up a pillow and played with it subconsciously. Why don't you let Qin Xian meet someone he likes on his own? Why do you have to make him go on a blind date? Qin Mo was silent for a long time. Yihuan couldn't wait any longer. She turned to look at him. After a long time, Qin Mo finally said, Because I'm afraid he'll be lonely. Yihuan, how many years can we be with him? Shunting and Yihuan will have their own families in the future. It's impossible for the 3 of them to be together like when they were young. You know Qin Xian. He doesn't say much, but he's very sensitive. So you want to find a partner for him? Yihuan asked angrily. It doesn't matter if he's willing or not. Qin Mo couldn't help but laugh. No, I just want to have dinner with him. After he finished speaking, Yihuan's eyes widened. She looked at Qin Mo for a long time and couldn't believe that Qin Mo wanted to have dinner with Qin Xian. After a long time, she murmured, You can ask him to go home. Qin Mo didn't say anything. Then, Yihuan realized that Qin Mo didn't want to be too deliberate. He didn't want to show how much he cared about Qin Xian. Otherwise, Qin Xian would be sensitive. She was silent for a while before saying in a low voice, then let him decide for himself. Qin, I think he likes Bai Anan. At least there's something about Bai Anan that he's attracted to. What she didn't say was that Bai Anan was strong enough to tolerate young Master Qin's sensitivity. She couldn't bring herself to say it out loud, as it would diminish her own prestige. But even if she didn't say it, Qin knew what she was planning. He smiled and said, "It's hard for them. You know that Qin Xian doesn't like women, and he doesn't like women who are older than him. I don't think he has much interest in marriage." Huan exclaimed, "How did you know? Men understand men." Qin sighed. He's almost 30, but he doesn't have a single woman by his side. He's like a monk. Either his heart belongs to someone like Shan Ting, or he doesn't want to get married. As he spoke, he sighed again. What happened when he was young had a great impact on him. I heard that. He went to see Ai Jia and then Ai Jia. He didn't say anything else. Huan was silent for a long time before saying, "Qin, was I too heartless back then? Did I have to send Ai Jia to prison? It seems very unfair to Qin Xian." Qin held her hand and shook his head. "No, it hurt Qin Xian the least. You weren't wrong back then. Ai Jia is a ticking time bomb." Huan let out a long sigh. "I just think it's unfair to Qin Xian. He's not very happy. You've tried your best. You love him so much." Qin sighed. "Actually, he's not that fragile. Huan, you should calm down and shave when it's necessary. Just treat him like the other two kids. I think Qin Xian will feel better this way." Huan let out an ah and stared at Qin. Then she snorted. "It sounds like I didn't get any recognition at all." "Of course not." Qin smiled. "Qin Xian calls me uncle outside, but he calls you mom. Isn't that enough?" Chapter 48-47. That's because I dote on him. Huan immediately became energetic again. She felt that she wasn't wrong and that Qin couldn't do anything to her. In fact, he also doted on her, so she was right no matter what. As they chatted, Qin Xian was about to leave when his phone rang. He opened it and saw that it was an unfamiliar number requesting to join WeChat. A few seconds later, he realized that it was the woman of the blind date tonight. He didn't hesitate and directly rejected it. Although it was a little direct and a little hurtful, he didn't want anyone to expect too much because of him. He didn't like to waste time, nor did he want to waste other people's time. He found his car and was about to get in when he saw Secretary helping Bai Anan out. Bai Anan seemed to have drunk, but she wasn't completely drunk. After a pause, he heard Bai Anan say to the secretary beside her, "I forgot my briefcase. Go back and help me get it." Secretary Yu was stunned and immediately nodded. She remembered that lawyer Bai had a few important documents in her bag. If they were lost, it would be a serious problem. After Secretary Yu left, Bai Anan leaned against a car and rested for a while. She was also waiting for the alcohol to pass. She drank about a bottle of red wine, and her face was a little hot. Just as she was feeling a little comfortable and cool in the wind, she felt a burning gaze on her face. She smiled. "Qin Xian, it's you again." Qin Xian closed the car door and walked towards her, standing in front of her. She placed her hand on the car door behind her, looking like she couldn't handle the alcohol. "Is there a need to do this?" Qin Xian frowned. "You have everything. Do you need to show your face in public like this?" Bai Anan smiled. "It sounds like I'm quite prostituted." Those who knew that she was a lawyer would think that she was an 18th-tier actress who wanted to drink with someone. Qin Xian looked her up and down and sneered. "Do you think you're not prostituted just because you're wearing professional clothes and drinking with a man?" Bai Anan was furious. She swung her handbag at him. "Qin Xian, that's enough. What does it have to do with you that I'm having a drink with my client?" One of his hands was placed beside her, trapping her with half of his body, not giving her a chance to escape. He leaned close, and his voice was hoarse. "Why don't you let the secretary drink it?" Bai Anan laughed dryly. "What are you laughing at?" Qin Xian's tone was not very good. Bai Anan laughed dryly again. "Yarn is looking at you. Why don't you ask her why she didn't help me drink?" Qin Xian immediately let go of her and turned sideways. "That's because others want to drink with Lawyer Bai. Who do I think I am? I can only be a chauffeur. I don't even have the right to drink. Bai Anan smiled and flipped her hair. Young Master Qin is a flower in a greenhouse. How would he know these things? If you didn't drink, you wouldn't be giving him face. Who would come looking for you in the future? When she said that, Qin Xian's expression turned a little ugly. He pursed his lips and didn't say anything in the end. He stood up and walked toward his car. He opened the car door and looked up at Bai Anan. Perhaps everyone has their own way of living. That's true. Bai Anan stood there with a smile. That smile stung Qin Xian's eyes. For some reason, he was a little angry. He was angry at Bai Anan. She didn't belong in this kind of place. She shouldn't drink with others. She was more suitable to sit on the sofa at home and deal with things on her laptop, where she could do nothing at all. She could just watch TV in her pajamas and cook hot pot in the middle of the night. Chapter 48:48. Of course, it was to get someone else to make it for her. You should not be drinking like this here. Qin Xian's way of thinking might also have something to do with the environment. It was probably because Huan was raised too well. Huan appeared when she was very young, so she didn't have to work hard and lived happily. In contrast, Bai Anan was a little embarrassed. He couldn't understand why she would choose such a life. Wasn't it good to be pampered? He got into the car and started it. When he saw Secretary coming over, he sat quietly in the car for a while before starting it. After he left, Secretary walked up to Bai Anan and looked in the direction of Qin Xian. She asked curiously, "What did little President Qin say to you just now?" Bai Anan sobered up a little and tilted her head. "How did you know he was Qin Xian?" "It's in the magazine," Secretary whispered. "He looks even better in real life than in the magazine. His skin is so smooth that it can be broken by a blow. He's the best in the world." Bai Anan glanced at her. "He's almost 30. How can he be so smooth?" Secretary looked fascinated. "Anyway, his skin is very good." Bai Anan took the things from her hand and opened them to take a look. She was a little relieved. She sat in the back seat and closed her eyes. "Drive slowly. I'm not feeling well." Secretary was a little surprised and turned her head. "Lawyer Bai, what's wrong? You didn't drink much tonight." Bai Anan usually didn't vomit no matter how much she drank. She would be fine after a good night's sleep. Bai Anan let out a long sigh. "I'm fine. I'm probably not in a good mood." Secretary thought that it was true. Lawyer Bai had just fallen out of love and hadn't gotten over it yet. She slowed down the car until they reached Bai Anan's apartment. She turned her head. "Lawyer Bai, let me send you up?" Bai Anan shook her head. "No need." She got out of the car with the documents and walked into the elevator. Secretary watched her go in before driving away. Bai Anan was alone in the elevator. She looked at herself in the mirror and felt a little tired. Being busy with work and Shunting's matter were quite a blow to her. Bai Anan rubbed the space between her eyebrows and thought to herself. She was already 30 years old. Qin Xian, that little brat, had already gone on a blind date. Moreover, it seemed like he went on blind dates frequently. Should she also go on a blind date? Her reflection in the mirror smiled bitterly. Back in her 180 square meter apartment, she opened the fridge and poured herself a glass of milk. She opened her laptop while drinking. Bai Anan did not have much entertainment. Work was her biggest form of entertainment. She had never felt that there was anything wrong with such a life. In the beginning, she liked Shunting because they shared the same values. Even if they lived together in the future, there would not be too much conflict. But now, Bai Anan felt that she would probably be alone for the rest of her life. She looked at the laptop screen and inadvertently saw Qin Xian's face. Tonight, he seemed to be quite unhappy and angry. Bai Anan thought that he was crazy. He didn't even have a wife, so why should he care about her? She was a little confused. Then, she couldn't stand it anymore and closed the laptop. She went to take a shower and felt a little hungry. She reached out to touch her stomach and suddenly remembered the hot pot at Qin Xian's house. Bai Anan went to the kitchen and opened the fridge. There was everything, but she didn't know how to make hot pot. She opened the laptop again and searched for it. Finally, she followed the steps. "It tastes weird." She spat it out with a look of disgust and stared at the pot in front of her. In the end, she still threw it all away. She was still very hungry, so she went to sleep. Lying on the bed, she still felt that something was wrong. She turned her head to look at her bedsheets, and suddenly felt that it would be better to change to black silk. Also, Qin Xin's bathrobe was quite comfortable to wear. Baianan did not sleep well that night. The next day, she went to the office with dark circles under her eyes. She had just sat down when Secretary came in and placed the morning newspaper in front of her. "Lawyer Bai, this is today's morning newspaper. A cup of coffee, thank you." Baianan lowered her head and flipped through the morning newspaper. Of course, she also saw that her cousin of the same age was in the headlines every day on both the financial and entertainment pages. It was not a waste of his good looks. Baianan sighed. Secretary brought the coffee over and gently placed it on the table. "CEO Yi is getting married next week. Here's the invitation." She handed over the invitation. Baianan shook her head. "You're still giving me an invitation." She took it out and looked at it. It was a very ordinary invitation. It didn't have the aura of a wealthy family at all. It was completely perfunctory. Baianan couldn't help but sigh. They didn't even take wedding photos. Secretary echoed. "That's right. I heard that CEO Yi doesn't like the future Mrs. Yi. He didn't even prepare a wedding house. It's still the villa he used to live in, and it hasn't been renovated or anything. It's either black or white. There's no joy at all." Baianan looked at Secretary. "You know quite a lot." Secretary smiled. "There's gossip every day." Baianan thought of something. "Do you know who that girl is?" Secretary's expression was a little meaningful. "Tell me," Baianan said calmly, then took a sip of coffee. Secretary coughed lightly. "She doesn't come from a good background. I heard that she used to be the manager of an 18th-tier actress in Starlight. Later, something happened to her, so she resigned. But I didn't expect that she was pregnant with a dragon's seed and went into hiding. At such a critical juncture, she ran out to let the child recognize her as a father. Don't you think she's so scheming?" Baianan glanced at her. "Maybe she has her own difficulties." Secretary held her face. "Lawyer Bai, you're so kind." These words were definitely sarcastic, because Baianan was famous in the circle of the rich for being an ingrate, a vampire-like existence. It was probably because she had done too many bad things, but at this moment, she actually had some rare kindness. Baianan glanced at her again. "You're really getting more and more insincere now. It's obviously bootlicking." Secretary smiled. Baianan glanced at her again, not knowing what to say. In the end, she lowered her head and drank her coffee while looking at the newspaper in her hand. She couldn't help but sigh in her heart. That girl named Su Mu won't have an easy life in the future. The gossip was quite clear. Su Mu's original family was very bad. Her father was a gambler, her mother was weak, and she had a younger brother who was like a vampire. The whole family lived in the suburbs of B City. Baianan roughly knew the story at a glance. It was nothing more than classmate Yi Xiangnan accidentally having a fling with classmate Su. Classmate Su did not want to resign, and then gave birth to the child. Originally, things were peaceful, and Xiangnan could still continue to live his life as a rich young master. However, this child was accidentally discovered by the Su family to be a dragon. Chapter 48-49. Thus, there was the following plot. It's really melodramatic. I don't understand. Baianan pursed her lips and smiled. Secretary whispered, "You won't be happy at the nightclub in the future, right?" Baianan folded the newspaper and glanced at her. "The one who won't be happy will only be Su Mu. Yi Xiangnan will only live happily." She was a little worried. Xiangnan's situation was different from Uncle Bai's. Annie Wen's family background was good, and Uncle Bai liked Annie Wen to begin with. But Su Mu, she saw the photo. She was really ordinary, and her family was so poor. Thinking about it, it would be very difficult for her to enter his eyes. When a married man's heart wasn't on his wife, one could imagine what his life would be like. He would be very careless. Baianan was born into a good family and had seen many such resentful couples in the circle. Later, after becoming a lawyer, she helped rich women fight lawsuits. A group of big shots hated Baianan to death. If she wasn't Emulin's daughter, she would have been skinned alive. Baianan sighed and threw the newspaper into the trash can. Seriously, letting people read these unnutritious things early in the morning, but the more unnutritious these things were, the better they sold. Public morals were deteriorating day by day. Baianen finished her coffee and began her day's work. Yurin said, "Last night, CEO Jean agreed to let our firm handle next year's affairs. Lawyer Bai, you're the best." Baianen put down the pen in her hand and said expressionlessly, "As expected, if he dares to let me drink, he won't dare to not give him face." After all, in B City, no one dared to not give her father Yumulin face. She could be considered to be relying on her father. Although she was capable, she couldn't deny that she was relying on him. Secretary Ya's bootlicking began again. That's because Lawyer Bai is trustworthy. Baianen looked at her and smiled. She opened the drawer and took out a bag. "This is for you. Today is your birthday, right?" Secretary Ya cupped her face, surprised and happy. "Thank you, Lawyer Bai. It was from Hermes. Although it was the entry fee, it was about 70,000 to 80,000 yuan, which was your Ren's 2-month salary. Shall we have dinner together tonight? It's my treat." Secretary Ya inched towards them. Baianen made a sound of surprise. "Invite all the colleagues," Secretary Ya exclaimed. "More than 100 people. Lawyer Bai, I'm just an odd job worker. Do you have to kill me like this?" Baianen thought for a moment. "Forget it. I'll go alone. Is this your return gift?" Yarn was from City H. Even if she was 26 years old, she wouldn't go out of her way to celebrate with her family. Baianen had a good relationship with her, so it wasn't a big deal for her to celebrate her birthday with her. She lowered her head and said, "Go order a cake and pay for it. Also, order a decent afternoon tea for all the employees in the afternoon. Consider your treat, but pay for it on my account." Secretary Ya was especially happy. "Thank you, Lawyer Bai." Baianen smiled. "Go out and do your work." After Secretary Ya left, she was slightly stunned. For example, she had never cared about birthdays. Other than her birthday, she never had the habit of celebrating birthdays. It was fine when she was young, especially after she went abroad to study and got her lawyer's license. She didn't have the leisure to celebrate birthdays at all. Therefore, it was good to have a meal together tonight and then take a walk to digest. She could also buy a set of bedsheets and pajamas. With that thought in mind, she felt that the night wasn't too boring anymore, and her mood improved slightly. In the afternoon, Baianen got off work on time. Secretary Ya happily carried a cake and followed by her side like a little attendant. Baianen smiled. "We're going to have a meal to celebrate your birthday. Don't make it seem like we're still working." Secretary Ya was quite excited when she was by her side. Many colleagues in the firm hadn't left yet, so of course they were very envious of Secretary Ya. However, this kind of thing couldn't be envied. She had a yellow vest and was a popular person by Lawyer Bai's side. She wouldn't be bad in the future. What kind of background did Lawyer Bai have? He always went in and out of the rich and powerful. How could he be the same as an ordinary person? Secretary Ya was also very scheming. She was just a secretary. She usually flattered people and cared about their well-being in life. She actually climbed up the social ladder. One had to know that Lawyer Bai usually looked peaceful, but in fact, she was quite cold. She didn't really get along with the subordinates in the firm. However, Lawyer Bai was a good person and was clear about rewards and punishments. Therefore, they would only despise your run for this matter and wouldn't think that there was anything wrong with Lawyer Bai. Baianen drove the car. She sat in the car and looked at Yarun. Her expression didn't look too good. It seemed like she cared about what others said. Baianen smiled. "It doesn't matter what others think. What's important is that you're happy. Today's your birthday." Yarun forced a smile. "Am I too high profile? These things are usually done by colleagues. There's nothing high profile about it. It's just that they feel that you get more. However, this world isn't fair to begin with, isn't it? There's nothing to complain about. If you have this time, you might as well do something else," Baianen said as she started the car. She was usually very rational. Even when facing this relationship with shunting that ended without a cause, she would just drink in a daze for the afternoon and let it go. Speaking of which, Baianen didn't have any desires. However, she also had the damn desire to win. Only love was something that she knew couldn't decide the winner. She had never been the one to be loved. Baianen pursed her lips and said lightly. Yurin echoed. "That's true. Why should I care about what others think? It's too tiring to live like that. That's the right way to think. Bai Anan smiled. If you always think about what others think, then you're living for them. Yurin hugged the cake and nodded vigorously. Lawyer Bai, you're really amazing. It's not that I'm amazing, it's that you're still young. Bai Anan was still smiling. She looked pretty when she smiled. Yurin stared at her for a long time before saying softly, Actually, Lawyer Bai, you're really good looking. Am I good looking? Bai Anan said indifferently. I'm not a celebrity, so my looks don't matter. Yurin retorted softly. Many people will like you if you're good looking. She paused for a moment. Actually, little President Qin is very good. Lawyer Bai, have you ever thought about being together with him? You mean Qin Xian? Bai Anan smiled. I've never thought about it. I guess we don't get along very well. Oh, Yurin said softly, then asked again in a small voice, What if he chases you? Bai Anan turned her head curiously. What if? Why do you keep mentioning him today? Yurin, do you like Qin Xian? If you do, I can introduce him to you. You should prefer people like you, because he kind of liked Yi Hui. Chapter 4850. Memorize Yarin heaved a sigh of relief. Lawyer Bai, their statuses are too different. As she spoke, she looked at Bai Anan. Bai Anan smiled. Identity isn't that important. Liking him is. Secretary Ya's voice became very soft. Lawyer Bai, do you really not mind? What's there to mind? Do men need women to support their families? Bai Anan asked matter-of-factly. Secretary Ya hugged the cake in her hands tightly and said slowly, That's because Lawyer Bai has never been looked at like that before, so he doesn't mind. Really? Bai Anan smiled. I really don't care. I think it's enough to be myself. Other people's opinions are not so important. If this man really loves you, he will protect you well and not let those worldly things hurt you. As Bai Anan said this, she suddenly thought of her parents. Back then, her mother was actually in a very difficult situation. Her identity was much more miserable than that of an ordinary person, but her father was still the same as before. He gave up his favorite profession for her mother. Bai Anan had grown up in a loving environment, but her personality had taken after Yimulin's. Sometimes, Yimulin regretted it. He had hoped that Bai Anan would be more like Shirley, a girl who was more adorable. At the very least, don't be so stubborn. However, Bai Anan felt that it was quite good. At least she had been living a good life for so many years. After a moment of absent-mindedness, she quickly returned to her senses. After all, she was still driving. Secretary Yu was also deep in thought. All the way to the restaurant, the two of them did not speak. The restaurant that Yurin had booked was very nice. It was French, and there was a silver candlestick with a white rose on the table. Bai Anan looked at them and smiled. Those who don't know might think we're having a candlelight dinner. Secretary smiled and thought for a moment. Why don't we change to another one? Lawyer Bai likes hot pot, right? Let's go have hot pot. Bai Anan stopped her. It's your birthday today. Of course you can eat French food if you want. The two of them sat down. The meal was ordered by Secretary Ya. She had a good grasp of Bai Anan's preferences and quickly ordered 2 sets of dinner sets. The waiter left, and Bai Anan took a sip of the aperitif and smiled faintly. Secretary Ya, it's time for you to find a boyfriend. Shouldn't you be doing something first? Secretary Ya imitated her and took a sip. Then, she choked a little and stuck out her tongue. Bai Anan remembered something. Did you get your license? You could be an assistant first. After a year or 2 with other lawyers, you will be able to hold your own. He took another sip of wine. It's better than being a secretary. Secretary Yu was silent for a moment before slowly saying, Not yet. Bai Anan didn't take it to heart. Then you have to hurry up. Secretary Yu smiled. At this moment, the dishes were served. Secretary Yu was about to dig in when Bai Anan stopped her. Light the candles first. Make a wish before you eat. Secretary Yu nodded, opened the cake, and made a wish. Bai Anan cut a piece of cake for her. You can eat now. Yurin smiled, ate the cake, and then began to enjoy the feast. This was probably the happiest birthday she had ever had since she started working. She glanced at Bai Anan from time to time. Bai Anan looked up. What's wrong? Yurin squeezed out a smile. I feel so blessed right now. Bai Anan laughed. You look so silly. Chapter 48:51. Memorized, she reached out and pinched Yoren's face. It was also because they were of the same gender and had a good relationship. Secretary smiled. Lawyer Bai, you're really good. Oh, Bai ain't an 8. My reputation isn't very good. I heard that my colleagues in the firm even gave me the nickname by Boppy. Is that true? Secretary expression was a little subtle. After a long time, she squeezed out a smile. Bai Ainen ate her food contentedly and said nonchalantly, when they get the funds, they'll definitely take back those 3 words. Secretary nodded vigorously. Yes, Lawyer Bai's prestige in the firm is very high now. Do you have to flatter me like this? I'm the boss, so of course I have the authority. Think about which firm in B City has better treatment than ours. Bai Ainen smiled faintly. Secretary revealed a rather proud expression. Of course not. That's it. Bai Ainen sighed. It's really not easy to be a boss these days. Secretary didn't say anything. She just looked at Bai Ainen with the admiration of a little girl. Bai Ainen couldn't stand her gaze. Just work hard. Don't flatter me. Yoren smiled and raised the bag in his hand. Thank you, Lawyer Bai. Bai Ainen smiled slightly and didn't say anything. After the meal, she originally wanted to go shopping with Yoren, but when she thought of the things she had to buy later, she gave up. Yoren had seen her wearing Qin Xian's pajamas, so he would definitely misunderstand. Although she also bought it, because she felt comfortable, she didn't want Yoren to misunderstand. Therefore, Bai Ainen went shopping alone. She carried her briefcase and walked around casually. She specially went to several shops before she found Qin Xian's pajamas and bedsheets. Of course, the price was also extremely expensive. She bought 2 sets, which added up to more than 200,000 yuan. How extravagant. Bai Ainen sighed that she didn't live as well as a man as she swiped her card. The shopping guide made a large order and personally helped her take it to the parking lot and put it in the trunk. Bai Ainen was just about to leave when the car window on the side suddenly lowered. The person sitting in the car was none other than Qin Xian. Qin Xian's gaze landed on the shop assistant. He frowned. Bai Ainen, what did you buy? Bai Ainen also didn't expect to meet Qin Xian here. She coughed lightly. Why do you care what I bought? It's none of my business, but this brand looks familiar to me. Qin Xian's gaze was probing. Or did Lawyer Bai buy something shady? Bai Ainen was exasperated. Just as she was about to speak, the shop assistant beside her said with a sweet smile, Sir, Miss Bai has purchased 2 sets of bedding and bathrobes from our brand. They're all made of black ice silk. They are very tasteful. The shopping guide thought that she had helped Bai Ainen out, but after she said that, Bai Ainen wanted to dig a hole and hide in it. What the hell is going on? Oh, Qin Xian smiled and opened the car door to get out. The shop assistant's eyes lit up. A luxury car, a handsome face, and a pair of long legs. Qin Xian glanced at her and gestured for her to leave. The shop assistant left rather dejectedly. Bai Ainen opened the car door and threw her briefcase inside. She leaned against the car door. Young Master Qin is quite charming. Even a chance encounter can make the shop assistant's heart flutter. Chapter 48:52. That's her business. Qin Xian leaned against his car and crossed his arms. Bai Ainen, why did you buy the same bedsheets and bathrobe as mine? Don't tell me you have a crush on me? Bai Ainen scoffed coldly. Has young Master Qin always been so narcissistic? She paused for a moment before rolling her eyes at him. I just feel that it's quite comfortable. Qin Xian looked at her strangely. Is that so? Then I hope you sleep better tonight. He sat in the car and did not close the door immediately. Instead, he seemed to be in deep thought. Perhaps it's not the bedsheets and pajamas. Lawyer Bai, you've been single for a long time, and there's something wrong with you. He chuckled. Fine a man. Compared to bedsheets and pajamas, it's much better for you to sleep. Bai Ainen was furious as she gritted her teeth. Seems like young Master Qin is very experienced in this aspect. I don't have any problems in this aspect. Qin Xian smiled and closed the door. Soon the car left. Bai Ainen harumphed and walked to the back of the car to open the trunk. She hesitated for a moment and wanted to throw the things away. She couldn't take it anymore, but it was a waste to throw it away. Hence, she brought it home. After returning home, Bai Ainin studied the washing and drying machine at home. It took her a long time to figure out how to use it. An hour later, she laid on the bed and took a shower before changing into a black bathrobe. Lying on the bed, she felt really comfortable. She took a sniff and muttered, "It's reasonable." She thought that she would fall asleep soon, but after staying awake for a long time, she just couldn't fall asleep. She could only stare at the ceiling and count sheep. When she counted more than 3,000, Bai Ainin finally fell asleep in a daze. She thought to herself in a daze, Qin Xian was right. It really didn't seem to have anything to do with pajamas and bedsheets. Did she really need a man? As it was the weekend, she slept all the way until 10 a.m. It was the elevator that woke her up. Her mother, Bai Xueli, called. "Ainin, come home for dinner." Bai Ainin grabbed her hair and said, "Mom, I might not be able to make it tonight." Bai Xueli rolled her eyes. "Look at you. You work all day. How can you care about anything else? What other things? I've taken good care of myself. I'm fair and chubby." Bai Ainin's voice was a little hoarse. Bai Xueli hummed. 30 and in. Are you going to be a bachelor for the rest of your life?" Bai Ainin was having a headache. "Mom, I just got dumped. You have to give me some time to recover." "Bah, you think you can fool me? It's impossible for you and Shun Ting to be together a long time ago. What kind of love do you have?" Bai Xueli complained. "Your auntie, he called me and told me that you stayed at Qin Xian's place for one night. Is that true?" Bai Ainin's mind was in a mess. After a long time, she stammered, "I was drunk. We didn't sleep together. Please don't misunderstand, Mom." "I know." Bai Xueli's tone sounded a little disappointed. "But Anin, you're too weak. You couldn't even settle Qin Xian alone." Bai Ainin did not know whether to laugh or cry. "Mom, why should I settle him? If you can't be Shun Ting's wife, then marry his brother. Let Shun Ting work hard for you to earn money." Bai Xueli was very happy. Yim Yulin, who was at the side, did not want to listen anymore. He walked over and took away his wife's phone. Chapter 48:53. Yim Yulin, who was standing by the side, didn't want to listen anymore. He walked over and took away his wife's phone. He said to Bai Ainin, "Don't listen to your mother. Come back for dinner tonight." There was indeed a young friend who would come over. Ainin should have guessed it, so she had to meet him. Bai Ainin wanted to reject him at first, but she thought to herself that Qin Xian might be right. She always had insomnia like this. Could it be that she had been single for too long? Endocrine disorder, morning shift. She was scared just thinking about it. Let's meet him. Maybe she would be normal after interacting with a good-looking man. Bai Ainin scratched her head, agreed, and hung up the phone. She raised her hand to look at the time. It was still early. She scratched her hair again, tied it into a bun, and got up to go to the bathroom. She looked at herself in the mirror. What was wrong with her? She looked young and didn't look like her father at all. While brushing her teeth, she thought that she was a failure. Shun Ting didn't like her, and Qin Xian didn't like her either. They treated her like an old woman. How was she old? She was obviously very young. Bai Ainin wiped the water droplets off her face and went downstairs after a simple maintenance. The part-time worker wouldn't come on weekends because she didn't like to be disturbed. But at the same time, she didn't have food to eat. She always had breakfast and lunch together. Bai Ainin took out her phone. "Let's order takeout." She searched for a vegetarian hot pot, but that restaurant didn't allow takeout, so she could only eat there. She didn't want to go out, so she called them. The receptionist kept saying that they didn't allow takeout because they were too busy. Bai Ainin was quite disappointed. She just wanted to eat today. The manager came to apologize in person and was about to hang up when Qin Xian, who came out for dinner with Shun Ting and Qin Huan, heard it and walked over. "Her surname is Bai? Is it Bai Ainin?" The manager held the phone and looked at Qin Xian. He naturally knew young Master Qin, so the person on the other side of the phone must not be an ordinary person. He said respectfully, "May I know Miss Bai's full name?" When he heard that, he immediately said to Qin Xian, "Yes, it's Miss Bai Ainin." Qin Xian thought for a moment and said, "Make a pot for her and prepare the dishes. I'll take them away later." "Ah." The manager felt that this was inappropriate and hesitantly said, "It's better if I do it myself. How can I trouble President Qin?" Qin Xian said calmly, "My friend." He had no intention of talking to the manager, so he went to the private room and said, "Brother Shunting, Yihuan, I won't be eating with you." Shunting seemed to have heard by Ainan's name, so he smiled. "Why don't we invite Lawyer Bai over?" Lawyer Bai. Qin Xian glanced at Yihuan, then smiled. "Forget it, I'll send it over." When he was about to leave, Shunting stopped him. Qin Xian. Qin Xian tilted his head. "Have you thought about it? Are you going to be an ordinary friend or something else?" Shunting's tone was very gentle. Although he was only a few years older than Qin Xian, he cared for him like a brother and a father, just like how he doted on Yihuan. Qin Xian smiled. "I know what I'm doing. It's just a pot. Besides, it's also gentlemanly." After he left, Yihuan held her chin and said lazily, "Since when did Qin Xian become gentlemanly?" Shunting smiled. "Probably from now on, I'll have one." Chapter 48-54. Shunting nodded. "That's true." Yihuan looked a little lazy while Shunting was busy preparing the dishes for her. After eating for a while, Yihuan spoke again. "Say, do you think Qin Xian likes Bai Anan? He wouldn't be like this to other girls. He has gone on blind dates more than 10 times, but he doesn't even send a girl home. It's as though he's afraid of being pestered by others. I think every blind date he attends is just like having a proper meal with my parents. We're all family, so why would he put on such a big show just for a meal? Look at how my mom has to dress up for such a grand occasion. She even has to wear the most expensive jewelry. It's tiring just looking at it." Shunting was amused by her. He tilted his head. "And he said that. No, I guessed it." Yihuan rested her chin on her hand. "The three of you are like children playing house, playing tirelessly. Aren't you tired?" Shunting chuckled again. "Perhaps they're enjoying it." He paused for a moment. "It's considered a mutual achievement. Perhaps Qin Xian wants Annie to expand her social circle. After all, Annie's been a little homebody these past few years." Yihuan let out a weird shriek. "My mom must have offended everyone in the circle for the past 2 years. Only her new friends are willing to go on blind dates with her son. The rest are only willing to play mahjong with her, because it had been more than 10 times. Really, Qin Xian only had blind dates with a girl. There was no follow-up. More than 10 times, without exception. There were too many people who wanted their daughters to marry Qin Xian. Qin Xian was a genius and had a net worth of hundreds of billions. Who didn't want to marry him? But Qin Xian didn't seem to have much interest in women. Yihuan thought so too. She thought that he had some bad habits. But today it seemed normal. Very normal. Shunting only smiled after hearing her complaints. He had never thought that Qin Xian was abnormal. As a man, he understood men better. Qin Xian just hadn't met a girl who could move his heart. At one point, he thought that the girl was Yi Hui. However, after Qin Xian showed a trace of amazement when they first met, he didn't seem to have any other expression. So Shunting knew it wasn't Yi Hui. However, no matter how he thought about it, he didn't expect this person to be Bai Anan. Qin Xian didn't seem to like Bai Anan, but no matter how unbelievable it was, it happened. Shunting smiled and did not say anything else. He continued to serve Qin Yihuan food. Yihuan was full. She reached out and touched her belly. "Are you trying to make me fat so that I won't be able to find a boyfriend in Italy?" Boyfriend? Shunting's eyes were gentle, not like the smiling tiger from the rumors. Yihuan's skin tensed up. Shunting still looked harmless. "I thought we had a status now. We ate and slept together." "Qin Yihuan, do you still want to find a boyfriend?" It was a slip of the tongue. Yihuan said with a fake smile. She chuckled, and her laughter was extremely forced. Shunting looked down. Should I be punished? Yihuan wished she could bite off her own tongue. Could this person not punish at the slightest provocation? Thinking about it, she felt extremely tragic. She said weakly, "Oh yeah, you must be very busy with work. He wouldn't go to Italy to punish me so easily, would he?" Shunting's eyes were smiling. "What do you think?" Chapter 48-55. President Shun, you're so busy every day. Yihuan smiled mischievously. Shunting picked up a piece of her favorite meat and put it in her bowl. He said very slowly. Tomorrow, I'll ask Secretary Wang to show you my work schedule for the next 2 years. But I also know that I'll probably spend a lot of time in Italy or something. What do you mean by probably? Yuan complained. I've never seen anyone more shameless than you. Really? Shen Ting said casually. Then let's not see each other for the next 2 years. You can find a boyfriend, and I can find a girlfriend. No, Yuan snorted and hugged his arm with both her hands. Shen Ting laughed and didn't say anything else. Just then, the manager came over and asked if they needed anything. Yuan stopped joking and said, Did President Qin leave? The manager smiled and said, He left about 10 minutes ago to deliver something to Miss Bai. By the way, will President Qin come back for dinner? Do you want me to ask the kitchen to make a pot or something? Rich people should be very particular. Shen Ting said calmly, No need, because Qin Xin wouldn't come back. Yuan looked at him and read something in his eyes. She stretched and said, I'm so full. I want to take a nap. Shen Ting, are you full? He turned his head and glanced at her. Then he wiped his lips with a towel and left with her after paying the bill. Yuan thought that he would take her back to his apartment, but halfway through the car, she noticed that something was wrong. This wasn't his apartment or hers, and it wasn't the place to go back to the Qin family's villa. It was Shen Ting. She was surprised and a little shocked. She didn't know what to do. Shen Ting said, Today is my mother's birthday. I'm taking you back to celebrate her birthday. Yuan said, Why didn't you say so earlier? We can eat there. Otherwise, it would be rude. You don't like noodles. Shen Ting smiled. Yuan was still arguing. But I didn't buy a gift. Shen Ting smiled again and said, I did. Yuan didn't know what to say. Actually, this wasn't the first time she had been to Shen Ting's house. She had been there twice when she was 15 or 16 years old. At that time, Shen Ting had already gotten his driver's license. He had brought her home during Chinese New Year. Shen Ting's mother really liked Yuan. To put it more realistically, after all, Shen Ting was from the Qin family. Yuan was cute, and as a mother, she knew what her son was thinking. Naturally, she would treat Yuan well. In the past, Mother Shen was a very strong-willed person. That was why she was so heartless as to send her son to be raised by someone else. Fortunately, Qin Mo was very understanding and polite. Shen Ting often came home during the Chinese New Year and other festivals. Later, Yuan grew up and ended up with Yi Xiangnan. Her son was disappointed day by day, and his mother felt sorry for him. If she hadn't let him go to the Qin family, he wouldn't have suffered. Shen Ting was unhappy day by day, even though he had so much. Shen Ting's mother knew Bai Anan and was very satisfied with her. But Shen Ting never brought her home, so she knew that her son's heart was still with Yuan. Everyone knew that Yuan had broken off the engagement, but only a few knew that she was with Shen Ting. Shen Ting didn't want to wait anymore. No matter how much he tried to restrain himself, it was useless. Chapter 48-56. Shen Ting's mother didn't know about it at first, but when she was about to have longevity noodles at noon, her son came home. The car door opened, and Yuan got out, and she knew that they were together. Yuan hadn't been here for more than 10 years. Shen Ting's mother had seen her grown up in magazines, and now she looked even better in person. However, she was an old lady who didn't show her emotions, especially in front of so many guests. She was still able to keep her composure. She held Shen Manting's hand in hand and entered the living room. Naturally, Father Shen was also happy. They had always been afraid that the Shen family would have no descendants. In the main hall of the villa, there were about 20 elders and juniors of the Shen family. It was not a small scene, and when they saw Shen Ting bringing Yuan back, they all looked interested. Yuan wanted to cover her face. She thought that only his family was here, and she didn't know that there were so many relatives. But she couldn't do that. She wasn't a child anymore. It would be rude and embarrassing for Shen Ting. Shen Ting held her hand naturally and took out a box for Mother Shen. Mom, this is the birthday present that Yuan picked for you. Mother Shen couldn't stop smiling. She opened the box in front of all the relatives. Inside was a white jade guanyin, about 15 centimeters long. It was rare to see a large piece of mutton fat jade, and it was of good quality. It could be considered a rare treasure. Mother Shin's expression changed a little. Actually, she knew that it was her son who picked it. Ihwan was a little confused. She was probably dragged here the last minute, but it didn't matter. It was fine as long as the child was willing to come back with Shen Ting. Shen Ting had everything now, but when she sent him to the Qin family, who knew how many people scolded her behind her back, saying that she was snobbish and greedy, she never defended herself. Back then, Shen Ting had made most of his own choices. Although parents hoped that their children would be successful, they wouldn't force him if he wasn't willing. But now, Shen Ting was still a child of the Shen family. He would come back for Chinese New Year, and he even brought the pampered daughter of the Qin family home. Who would dare to say that their Shen Ting was someone else's slave? Mother Shen's eyes moistened as she recalled the past. She looked down at the gift to hide her gaffe. I like it. Good girl. There was silence all around. They were all holding their breaths. They still had some doubts. Would Qin Ihwan follow Shen Ting? At this moment, Shen Ting nudged Ihwan lightly. Aren't you going to call for help? Ihwan was originally a thick-skinned person, but at this moment, her face suddenly became thin. She stammered. She opened her mouth, wanting to call out Auntie, but she felt that it was too distant. She and Shen Ting were already like that, and the surrounding people were probably watching a good show. She suddenly realized that Shen Ting's journey might not have been easy. He wasn't a child of the Qin family. While he enjoyed the convenience, he also had to bear a lot of pressure. Thus, she cheekily said, "Happy birthday, Mom." Shen Ting's mother cried tears of joy. She looked at her husband speechlessly. Back then, Father Shen had strongly opposed Shen Ting going to the Qin family. Shen Ting's excellence had convinced him that his son would be a phoenix among dragons in the future. There was no need for him to go to someone else's family. But now his son had really gotten the Qin family's daughter. What else was there to say? He was going to live in a wise family. Father Shen smiled and glanced at Shen Ting. Mother Shen stroked Ihwan's hair again before she hurried upstairs. She took out a jewelry box. It was filled with expensive things that Shen Ting had bought for her over the years. Chapter 48:57. She picked out a small box and opened it. Inside was a set of pink diamond jewelry. Mother Shen gently caressed it and smiled. All these years, Shen Ting hasn't said anything, but when he gave me this set of jewelry, I knew who his wife was in his heart. I also knew who he wanted me to give this set of jewelry to. Ihwan, take this. It's a token of my appreciation and also a token of Shen Ting's appreciation. It was her birthday today, and her son was happy. No matter how hard she tried, her eyes were still wet. Ihwan nodded and reached out to help Mother Shen wipe her tears. Mother Shen was embarrassed. I'm sorry, I'm too happy. Ihwan smiled. Then you'll be happy every day. Mother Shen glanced at Shen Ting. I'll be happy every day if Ihwan stays with me every day. Shen Ting rubbed his forehead, thinking that this request was a little too much. Ihwan was also embarrassed and did not make a sound. Shen Ting smiled faintly and said, Ihwan is going to Milan to learn photography for about 2 years. My focus will be there for the next 2 years. I'll get married when I come back. Ihwan glanced at him. You've shown your true colors. You even said you'll give her freedom in 2 years. It's all fake. Shen Ting looked at her and smiled. Then he brought her to meet the 3 aunts and 6 old maids. He called them one by one. Ihwan made a small fortune. On the other side, although Mother Shen couldn't see the 2 children every day, she was satisfied. She had thought that her son was going to be a bachelor. She hadn't expected someone to suddenly give birth to a child for Yi Xiangnan. She really had to thank them. However, Mother Shen was worried that Shen Ting was just a substitute. So in the afternoon, after sending off the relatives and friends and arranging for Ihwan to stay in Shen Ting's room, Mother Shen asked Shen Ting about it worriedly. As a mother, she was always afraid that her son would be hurt. Shen Ting smiled and said calmly, Actually, we've been together since the day Ihwan came of age. Mother Shen was shocked. There was actually such a thing? However, as an elder, she was too embarrassed to ask about the details. Shen Ting, on the other hand, was grateful for Ihwan's willfulness in the past. If it weren't for that night, she would probably be with Yi Xiangnan without hesitation, and he wouldn't have anything to do with it. Shun Ting continued to talk to his parents. Mother Shen asked, "Are you really going abroad? Aren't you going to get married now?" "Shen Ting, you're already 31. You could be a father at this age." Shen Ting naturally said, "If Yi Huan is pregnant, we'll get our marriage certificate directly, and the child will be born." Mother Shen understood. She was letting nature take its course. Based on their current level of love, she would probably be able to hold her grandson soon. However, she was afraid that she wouldn't be able to hold her grandson later because the Qin family had someone else. Shen Ting smiled, "And he will probably be busy with Qin Xian's marriage. She won't have time to care about us." At the mention of Qin Xian, Mother Shen was also very fond of him. She muttered, that's true. That child should be getting married soon. He's 28, right? He's really good looking." Shen Ting smiled. "Yes, but he should have a girlfriend soon." "Which family's girl is she from?" Mother Shen asked naturally. She didn't expect Shen Ting to give her an answer. After all, B City was so big. Even if he told her, she wouldn't know who it was. However, Shen Ting smiled and said, "By Anan." Mother Shen was shocked for the second time today. She looked at her son and didn't say anything for a long time. The meaning in her eyes was still unclear. Was she old and couldn't keep up? This. Couldn't they expand the scope? Why were they all old acquaintances? Chapter 48:58. Shen Ting could tell from Mother Shen's gaze that Mother Shen was looking at. He coughed lightly. "Mom, I've only eaten with Bai Anan a few times. It's nothing." Mother Shen glanced at him. She knew that her son wouldn't lie, and he wouldn't do anything out of line. Thinking about it, she felt that it wasn't a bad idea. Qin Xian's temperament was rather sensitive, and he did not easily accept others. Bai Anan's personality just happened to complement his. As Mother Shen thought about this, she felt that she should go and burn some incense. It was great that all three children had good endings. Shen Ting saw that she was so optimistic. It was her birthday, so he didn't want to spoil her mood. After chatting for a while, he went to his bedroom. When he opened the door, Yi Huan was sprawled on the bed, sleeping soundly. She never slept properly. She was sprawled on the bed with her face buried in the white pillow. Her black hair covered half of her face. Shen Ting slowly sat down on the bed and reached out to touch her face. He said in a low voice, "You're still like a child." He touched her hair, thinking that it should be very long after a year. His gaze met the shadow under her eyes, and he knew that she was tired these days. Shen Ting's face heated up, and he didn't dare to think further. She wouldn't wake up for the time being, so he took a book and quietly accompanied her. It wasn't until 2 o'clock in the afternoon that Yi Huan woke up. When she opened her eyes, she saw Shen Ting sitting beside her. Her voice was a little soft. "Shen Ting," he grunted. "You're awake." Yi Huan's face was red because she had just woken up. She moved her little head and rested it on his lap. "How long have I been asleep?" Shen Ting smiled. "It's 2:30. It's been so long. Isn't it rude?" Yi Huan said, but she didn't move. Shen Ting chuckled and pinched her face affectionately. "My mom won't mind." "What do you mean?" Yi Huan stared at him, her eyes sparkling. Shen Ting smiled again and decided to lie down with her, telling her some of the things that happened when he was young. They had known each other for many years, but he had never mentioned it. Yi Huan tilted her head. "You can do that too? I was only a teenager at that time. It's normal for boys to be a bit naughty." Shen Ting was still smiling, feeling a kind of tranquility and beauty. He had been with Yi Huan for a long time. If he had to say that there were any stormy waves between them, there definitely wouldn't be any. However, he had already determined a long time ago that she was the person he wanted to spend the rest of his life with. His heart would only be slightly stirred by her. That was enough. His eyes were a little clear, and Yi Huan suddenly understood. She reached out to cover his eyes and cried, "You're not allowed to look." Shen Ting smiled faintly. "Why can't I look?" "Which part of you isn't mine now? Tell me him?" Yi Huan felt that he was really shameless, but it didn't seem like he was wrong. As the two of them bickered, Qin Xian was at Bai Anan's condominium. That woman who couldn't wait to eat hot pot was handling her work, and she didn't even raise her head. Qin Xian crossed his arms in front of his chest. Lawyer Bai, you've become even more aggressive. He paused for a moment, as though he had thought of something. Oh yeah, it seems like you can only eat with your secretary. Do you spend your birthday with her too? Bai Ainan's fingers tapped on the keyboard. It's Yarn's birthday, not mine. I don't have the habit of celebrating birthdays. Chapter 48:59. Qin Xian was speechless. He raised his hand and looked at his watch. It's almost 1 o'clock. Really? Bai Ainan stretched and closed her notebook. Then she sat down at the dining table with Qin Xian. How did you find me here? Qin Xian was a little dissatisfied. Isn't your reflex arc too long? Bai Ainan took a bite. The taste was what she remembered, but it was a little worse than what Qin Xian made himself. She narrowed her eyes in satisfaction before answering him. When I'm working, I don't pay much attention to other things. Qin Xian smiled faintly. Workaholic. I'm not marrying you. Why are you in such a hurry? Bai Ainan flipped her hair and looked up at him. Also, you're unaccountably solicitous today. If you're not hiding something, you must be hiding something. Qin Xian's expression turned cold. Don't use the harshness of your profession to guess other people's goodwill. Bai Ainan stopped what she was doing and looked at him silently for a long time. Then she smiled maliciously. Qin Xian was a little annoyed. What are you laughing at? Bai Ainan glanced at him again and poked the fish with her chopsticks. She said softly, You don't want to be a third wheel, do you? She hit the nail on the head. Qin Xian reached out and touched his nose. You have a sharp nose. It's just a professional habit. It's just a normal deduction. Bai Ainan said matter-of-factly. Besides, I won't be particularly grateful to you. Qin Xian smiled. You're really rational. Bai Ainan just snorted. I'm not a little girl anymore. Isn't it a little silly to be moved so easily? Qin Xian smiled and didn't say anything else. Instead, he ate the hot pot with her. After dinner, she still had work to do, so naturally, Qin Xian went to clean up. After cleaning up, he did not leave, and Bai Ainan did not chase him away. She was really too busy, and Qin Xian didn't seem to have much of a presence here. He would only occasionally pass her a cup of hot tea or something. Bai Ainan felt that it was pretty good to use. If she wasn't Qin Xian and young Master Qin, she could really use it for the whole year. However, this peaceful time ended at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Bai Ainan had just finished her work when Bai Shiwili called. Ainan, have you left yet? The guests have been drinking tea here for an hour. Didn't you say you would come back early? Bai Shiwili asked. Bai Shiwili lowered her voice and hid in a corner to make a call. Bai Ainan held the phone and listened. She slapped her forehead with one hand and said, Mom, I forgot. I'll change my clothes and go home right now. Bai Shiwili couldn't help but reprimand her. After hanging up the phone, she was a little worried. Was I not interested in men anymore? Bai Ainan also hung up the phone. She looked up and saw Qin Xian's ambiguous gaze. She coughed lightly and said, I'm going out in a while. Before she could finish, Qin Xian asked calmly, Blind date? Bai Ainan was quite uncomfortable. In Qin Xian's eyes, it was as if she hated marrying him again. She tried her best to act as if nothing had happened. I'm just going back to my parents' house for a meal. Qin Xian smiled and said, Blind date is a blind date. I didn't say anything. Besides, didn't I say that you need a man? Bai Ainan was furious. Hey, have you had enough? I said that I can't sleep. I slept very well. Really? Qin Xian smiled. I hope so. He took the car key and said, You're not coming back tonight, right? I'll send you. Chapter 48:60. Bai Ainan refused. I can drive myself. She was stubborn, but then she remembered that her car was driven away for maintenance. She didn't want to take a taxi, so she stopped Qin Xian. Hey, give me a ride. Qin Xian smiled, leaning against the door and looking at her. Bai Ainan ran back to her bedroom. When she came out, she changed into a set of casual clothes. A white knitted shirt, a pair of black pants, and a windbreaker. It was the first time for Qin Xian to see her so casual, so he was stunned for a moment. Bai Ainan hurried out, pressed the elevator outside, and turned her head, Go to my house for dinner. Qin Xian smiled. Don't you have a blind date? Bai Anan didn't speak. About 2 seconds later, Qin Xian gritted his teeth. So you didn't drive me away in the afternoon? She just wanted to take him home to make the other party retreat. This woman was really making the best use of everything. Bai Anan sat in his car and fastened the seatbelt. Anyway, you have nothing to do at night, and you have nowhere to go, right? Do me a favor. Vampire. Qin Xian started the car and snorted indifferently. Bai Anan leaned against the back of the chair and turned her head for a while. Don't have any ideas. I'm not interested in you. Qin Xian snorted. Sister, don't worry. I'm not interested in you at all. Sister. For the sake of his value, Bai Anan tolerated it. The car drove for about an hour and arrived at Ye's house at 6 o'clock. Yi Mulin had already retreated, but he was still one of the most powerful people in City B. Not everyone could afford to offend him, just because he was in a higher position. Of course, those who could go on a blind date with Bai Anan were naturally not bad, and it was inevitable that they were well matched. Before Bai Anan got out of the car, she said to Qin Xian, "Don't talk too much later, just say that we're ordinary friends." She still couldn't embarrass the other party. After all, the two families that were able to gather together had dealings with each other. Qin Xian just smiled. He got out of the car and went to the back of the car to take out the gifts from the trunk. He then entered the car with Bai Anan. As soon as they entered, Yi Mulin, who was in the hall, felt embarrassed. The child of a family friend was still here, and had clearly come back for a blind date. Why did she bring the child of the Qin family over? On the other hand, Bai Shuali's eyes lit up. This one was better looking than the other one. She had always looked at appearances. She had always liked Qin Xian. He was a good kid and a genius. Shenting was good too. However, she had seen many purebred businessmen like Shenting, so she was not surprised. Moreover, Qin Xian's looks had won Bai Shuali's heart. Bai Shuali couldn't wait to appreciate him for Bai Anan. The atmosphere was a little strange. Fortunately, Yi Mulin introduced that this was also the child of a family friend. He was from the Qin family. He meant that these two were the same, and there was no bias. However, the other person was not a fool. Bai Anan could come back with Qin Xian's car, so they must be related to each other to a certain extent. What else could he say? He could only say that he was a step late. Bai Anan was the model daughter-in-law of the upper class. Of course, the most important thing was that she had a good father. However, young men might not like such a workaholic wife. Thinking about it, most men still hope to find a wife who was as beautiful as a flower. Dinner time passed in a subtle atmosphere. That talented young man tactfully took his leave. Yi Mulin felt very apologetic, but there were some things that he couldn't say out loud. He saw him off and left. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.